So I was spending dozens of hours preparing this epic episode with a bunch of different regions, forcing myself to focus, using apps that block all games and websites during my work hours, buying a standing desk and forcing myself to stand for hours so the discomfort forces me to be more focused and efficient within my work. You know, the usual stuff. When I realized I've been working on the Polish portion of this episode for 3 days now. Poland, the land that's kind of Russian, kind of Scandinavian European, caught between worlds, and according to all my research, the best of both. Seriously, after my experience reading about it, I genuinely think it's one of Europe's best kept secrets, and I want to move there now. But that's not what this is about. I realized the Europe episode would be an hour long, with Poland being a half hour of it, because I didn't know this. But Poland's been outpacing almost every team in the project, and have built so much of their country in Minecraft, it bedazzles the mind. So, they've got their own episode now. The Slavic Baltic Scandinavian member of the European Union that doesn't use the euro and handles everything in their country a little different than the rest of the continent, with a ton of in their words and shit. Here's everything Poland's ever done. The first very important piece of information. They have a capital. It's called Warsaw, and they've manifested so much of it in Minecraft. They've built this huge mall, what they call a shopping center, which was commissioned by the Globe Trade Center, which reminds me of the World Trade Centers, never forget. Rodamco Europe, which is a real estate firm, partnered with the GTC for them to manage the entire mall in exchange for getting half the profits. With the mind-boggling modern prices and the constant human surrender to consumerist impulses, I can only imagine what kind of profits that deal has generated in the last 20 years. Team Poland has also pulled progress out of the digital ether in Wierzbno, a neighborhood in Warsaw that actually began in the 1770s as its own settlement and was incorporated into Warsaw by 1916. This place prior to that functioned as a holiday village holding many interesting attractions, such as a hydrotherapy facility. The name Wierzbno comes from the Polish word wierzba, meaning willow, likely a reference to the persistence of all the willow trees in the area. Wierzbno has 2 Roman Catholic churches and a quite small population of less than 2,000. Here is development on what they call Policznica, or the broader area encompassing the Warsaw University of Technology. It's one of the leading institutes of technology in all of Europe, with almost 2,500 employed teaching faculty and almost 40,000 students. The historicity of the university itself goes all the way back to the 1700s, focusing primarily on military technology and mining. Poland spent some of the longest amount of time interned by the German forces during World War II since they were the first invaded, and because of this, the university secretly continued to operate underground. About 3,000 students took part in these secret courses, many earning graduate degrees and PhDs, and their discoveries and work helped to rebuild Poland in the post-war era. The campus and wider area is a cornerstone to Poland infrastructure and culture, both then and today. But if you want culture, look no further than the PGE Narodowy Stadium, also in Warsaw. This is a retractable roof stadium that seats almost 60,000 and, in addition to football, hosts concerts and monumental events. This is the largest stadium in Poland, being a recent construction being finished in 2011. Makes sense, they weren't exactly building retractable roofs during World War I when we were still walking through streets paved with horse manure. The most recent concerts that blew attendance past the stadium's actual seating capacity were from artists Ed Sheeran and Beyonce, both of them getting 100,000 people or more. In the future, Taylor Swift is happening this summer, so that will probably blow past this mark and, based on current cultural projections, may set the all-time attendance record for the stadium. This next area is in the Stare Miasto of Warsaw, which is the Polish saying for Old Town. But really, this area is gigantic and connected to so many different areas of completion that it spans well beyond that. And the same is true for time. A town in the general area of Warsaw started manifesting 1,000 years ago, officially designated in 1300 and beyond. The St. John's Cathedral, built within this area by Team Poland, was constructed in 1390 and became religiously and thus politically relevant, and was made the new capital of the Masovian Duchy in 1413. But we would see very little architectural evidence of this era since the very next century they brought in Italian architects to reshape Warsaw's Old Town, which now gives its most early and oldest building buildings and Italianate appearance. Between 1655 and 1658, the town was pillaged and assaulted by a coalition of forces made up of Swedish, Brandenburgian, and Transylvanians. But Poland was taken over by the Russian Empire sometime later, leading to the November Uprising when the Polish rose against the Russians in revolution. But the Russians put them down hard. Just absolutely f***ing destroyed them. In 1861, in Old Town Warsaw, a spreading group of Polish protesters were met by Russian forces who just fired into the crowd. This preceded the January Uprising a few years later, where the underground Polish national government secretly resided in Warsaw. Free from Russia's grasp, Poland and Warsaw flourished throughout the late 1800s with the arrival of gas infrastructure, street lighting, and modernization of trams. But it wouldn't last forever. Warsaw was occupied by Germany during World War I for an entire 3 years, until the Armistice of 1918, when Germany was ordered to withdraw from all conquered lands. Warsaw was finally allowed to breathe a sigh of relief for about a year and a half until the expanding Bolshevik Communist Revolution arrived at Poland's front door to conquer them. The fascists, then the communists. Everyone wants Poland's nuts. Luckily, they were stopped at the Battle of Warsaw, a pivotal and decisive victory which prevented the revolution from spreading any further into Europe. But it wasn't over, because the last World War just wasn't bloody and destructive to the globe enough. We need to do it again, and this time with ethnic cleansing and genocide. Warsaw, being one of the first nation capitals to be occupied by Germany, once they started taking Jews away, started forming the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a cultivation of Jews armed with munitions, guns, and explosives. It's the most significant Jewish uprising in World War II history. The Polish knew that the advancing Red Army would push the Germans to evacuate Warsaw, and so in concert with the German evacuation, the Warsaw Uprising began, in which Polish attempted to take control of the city. The Nazis responded by destroying the city in retaliation. Casualties were enormous, almost 20,000 in the Polish resistance being killed in the fighting, and nearly 200,000 Polish civilians dying, mostly from mass executions, and everyone remaining alive in Warsaw was hauled off to the POW camps. Almost all of Warsaw was gone. All of the museums, art galleries, theaters, historical landmarks, and so began the long campaign for the rest of the century of rebuilding Warsaw. So most of what you're seeing in Old Town, in fact, isn't. It's all new. Speaking of new shit, this is the largest shopping center in Europe, Westfield Arcadia, or at least it was in 2007. Now what's awesome about this building in Minecraft, worked on by the Poland team, is that this most gigantic mall of Europe actually has a decked out interior. They've pretty much established all of the huge sky-high hallways with full completion in tons of shops, though not every shop is complete yet. But it would take you at least 20 minutes to fully explore this thing in Minecraft. A single mall. Hats off to the team for this extraordinary accomplishment, very rarely seen in the project's climate. More things rarely seen. An area so big that my computer crashed from reaching Bobby's chunk limit trying to load it. Or my computer's hardware, I'm not entirely sure. But it's the district within Warsaw called Wola, a traditional and industrial district historically that was transformed into a massive financial center. It was also here that the single largest massacre of Poles in World War II happened by a firing squad, with more than 50,000 deaths occurring. Wola was not transformed from industrial to financial until starting in the 1990s. And why might that be, you ask? If they had to reconstruct Warsaw from scratch after World War II, why not start earlier? Because the Soviets were the last foreign army to march through the country of Poland, and they set up satellite governments in many of the countries they marched through. Poland was not part of the Soviet Union, but was a satellite estate and friend of the empire. So if you tried to make a capitalist financial center out of one of your main districts in your capital, Soviet Union would be partial to let you know that they don't take too kindly to that kind of thing we call money. And so Wola transforms post-USSR. And to commemorate that spirit of money, specifically money being departed from one's hands in the ever-persistent black hole in the heart of humanity's shadow, manifesting as an inevitable and irresistible indulgence in repetitive consumerism, here's something they've also built in the corner of Wola's progress, known as Wola Park, another glorious shopping mall with a building that's even fatter than a hut slug. Okay, we've covered all of Warsaw. Jesus. Let's see, next up is Wrocław. They have Dworzec Główny, which is the largest passenger railway station in the city, and lots of surrounding progress. Passenger servicing numbers have during the COVID crisis, but amazingly in 2022, it has erupted to unprecedented levels never seen before. I think people may have gotten a little restless cooped up inside for so long. The station began construction in 1840, initially served one little train track in modest beginnings, and slowly expanded over the last almost 200 years, being mostly unscathed by the World Wars. Its last major renovation took place 10 years ago, and during this renovation, they actually found a pre-20th century tunnel that was not on any maps, plans, or anything. It was flooded, had very old bottles, and had evidence of recent drilling, indicating someone else had found the tunnel and wanted to know where it led. It seems to remain a mystery to this day, as further down the tunnel it becomes too flooded to continue exploration. And speaking of Wrocław, here's an amazing and beautiful range of the center of the city in downtown, or Old Town, whatever you prefer to call it, which was the historical capital of Silesia. Silesia is the name of a region that predates modern mapping, since historical Silesia is mostly based in Poland, but some of it was also in Czechoslovakia and some of it in Russia. Like a lot of places in Poland, in addition to being the capital of Silesia, it's been part of the Kingdom of Germany, the Russian Empire, the Monarchy of Austria, Prussia as well. The territory of Poland in general has just been historically wrestled with by the various neighboring superpowers. It's been really unfortunate. It's understandable. Here you're seeing cathedrals, opera halls, museums, and the list goes on in this incredible area influenced by so many of the cultures that took possession of it throughout the ages. And how far back that goes dates to about 150 AD when people started living there. You know, Jesus was long dead, but he's got some followers by now. But with the Roman Empire still going strong, they're mocking them, feeding them to the lions, that sort of thing. 1,000 years later, you find the inhabitants of Wrocław burning down the entire city and abandoning it during the Mongol invasion, with the exception of Wrocław Castle, which was successfully defended against the incoming Mongolian hordes. And honestly, with the 1,000 years of history I skipped, and the 1,000 years of history since, being a historical capital with whatever Polish land happened to be called at the time, if you pick any random point in history, it's just such a fest of conflict that the video would be 3 days long if I even covered half of it. It's a miracle with all the raisings and conflict that they've preserved such a beautiful old town. And that's not even half of what you're able to do in this city. I'm starting to think I should book a flight to Poland. Here's another little place in Wrocław called Podwale. Now, because of the language barrier, there's less translation available on data in the area to sort of make out exactly what I'm looking at when I don't have definitive information on it. But on Google Maps, it looks like this is a place of government? The fun axle-shaped building, I believe, is a courthouse, which would explain the mixed reviews on Google. And the next building in the wedge of a city block is the police department. For being a place of government, it is beautiful architectural work, more testament to the industriousness of the Polish. Speaking of things that are beautiful, this is no architectural marvel, but it's so green it's like a dream. The neighborhood of Gadał in Wrocław is actually quite old. Humble beginnings quite a few centuries ago, but it has eventually evolved into this modern housing project, and half of it over a century ago was bought by the military. They then leveled all the houses, take that, and they made it into an exercise area, which accounts for all the detailed and beautiful soccer, football, whatever sorts of courts and fields and whatever you do in sports land. And here is Lotnisko, Wrocław's militarized airport that was originally created by the Germans when they had the city occupied, and is now heavily used by the United States military. Funny how that works. Despite being for the military, it also handles civilian passengers and serviced almost 4 million people in 2023, as people are eager to get out of their homes after forgetting the sound of trees and the taste of bread. They have plenty of restaurants, so have at it, and if you're hungry for a tree, I don't know, get something vegan? But if you're looking for vegans, you wouldn't find any in the city of Krakow 5,000 years ago. But you would find a Stone Age settlement that eventually led to a historical capital of Poland and the second largest city in the country. This is Krakow's Stare Miasto, or Old Town as we would say. And when I say old, we mean really old, being perhaps Poland's oldest city. But none of the buildings you see date back to the Stone Age. They don't even date past 1241, when the Mongols invaded and razed the city to the ground. They rebuilt it, and just 20 years later, the Mongols came and razed the city to the ground again. Fool me once, shame on you. fool me twice, so they took defense to a new level and successfully repelled those Mongolian assholes in 1287. And this led centuries later to a golden age in which the bubonic plague would sweep through the city, leaving 20,000 people dead. Soon after Napoleon took over the place and after all of Europe defeated him, they ended up making Krakow its own independent city-nation republic, which lasted until 1845 when it was annexed by Austria. During this time, the city experienced an architectural golden age, with many talented artists and architects creating the beauty of the city you see today. Austrian rule over Krakow ended in 1918 at the end of World War I when the continent started redrawing a lot of the borders. After World War II, it became part of the Polish People's Republic, the USSR client state that erased Krakow's university heritage as a city and turned it into another industrial factory to provide steelworks for the Soviets. With Krakow's historical endurance from the Stone Age to the present, it was influenced by every historic architectural influence, both European and Soviet, that you can think of. Since religion dominates the historical landscape of this geographical area, Krakow is typically known as the city of churches, and Team Poland has created many of them in this huge starting area of progress in Minecraft. And just to the west of Krakow's old town is Piasek Poludny, in which starting progress has also begun, featuring what looks like a government building. I don't know, I can't speak the language, but here is also progress in the city of Lodz. Cool f***ing name. And look at those little dots and lines through the eye and shit. Polish is so cool. And the city took over as capital for the country while Warsaw worked out that small little problem of basically not existing anymore. With Poland becoming communist, Lodz and many other cities were facing problems, so they went on a series of hunger protests in 1981, the most notable one being in Lodz with 50,000 people marching, complaining about not having the strength to work because there were such dire food shortages. Meanwhile, outside of the Union, in places like America and Japan, kids are going to arcades, eating pizza at Chuck E. Cheese, and Nintendo is about to go viral. It's a really striking comparison, like two alien worlds, but it was the same planet at the same time. Also on planet Earth is growing progress in the Polish city of Gdansk, the capital and largest city of the Pomeranian Voivodeship. Now, the thing about Pomeranians is that they are absolute abominations of nature. They shouldn't exist. It would be a mercy for us to neuter all of them and watch the last generation live out its last life, disappearing into the darkness. Did you know that all pugs are brain damaged because their skulls are too small and oddly shaped to fit their brains? This is why little dogs are so psychotic. They are a mistake of man, a breeding experiment gone wrong. They have to be stopped. Anyways, here you can see a beautifully detailed street by Team Poland in the city of Gdansk, showcasing the incredible shops this port town has to offer. It's traditionally a university town, full of universities and historic museums. Now, if you want to talk port towns, take a look at Sopot. I don't know where we are. Are we in Italy? No, we're in the Pomeranian province. Oh God, not again. Look, those little big truck, little dick, big talk won't shut the f*** up with the barking. Sorry. This is the first town we've seen in Poland that's actually a small location, being populated with only 40,000 residents. Sopot is an old Slavic word meaning stream. Makes sense? I'm seeing a lot of water. This place was, you guessed it, also looted and burned to the ground, specifically in 1733, which would explain what we see today, the rebuild happening during the late period of the Italian Renaissance, which was spearheaded by Polish nobility of Pomerania. God damn it, Sopot was later annexed by the Kingdom of Prussia, that weird kingdom we always hear about but can't find on any map. If you want a video of everything Prussia's ever done, I'm sorry, their kingdom was continually beaten in wars and conflicts until World War I, where their remains were disintegrated, and then the state was made to not exist with World War II paperwork. That's the history of Prussia, I guess. But if you want to talk about historic beginnings, how about this beautiful, gigantic area of progress that Team Poland has accomplished in Szczyzn, originally settled by Vikings and West Slavs? This was another one of those situations with Viking paganism and such, where they're Christianized in the few centuries after the last millennium. We went over that in the Iceland video. it can be a really brutal business. Speaking of brutal, this place was taken over in early modernity by the Swedish Empire, an empire originating in Sweden that took over most of the Baltics. It's hard to imagine the Swedish, with all of their modern manners, forming something like a brutal expansionistic empire, but hey, most modern countries at some point in history had their turn being a little Napoleon. When the Swedish Empire fell, Sigismund turned to Prussian control. Now, sometime later, this Prussian commander has 5,000 men, and the city gets assaulted by French General Lassalle, who only has 800 men. But the Prussian commander just gives up the city out of fear. Okay, now it makes sense why Prussia doesn't exist anymore. He gets convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment later for giving it up without a fight. What a loser. In the 1900s, during the Polish communist era, Sigismund residents protested communism, taking to the streets on a yearly basis, with it getting so bad they implemented martial law in 1981 to suppress the dissident behavior. Lots of the architecture of this area is very Art Nouveau, beautifully represented in Minecraft. And if you want Art Deco and Nouveau, oh my god, this next one is the Old Market Square of Stary Rynek in Gorzów Wielkopolski, which originated as a craft and trade settlement, but enough about that. I know what you were wondering. What kind of money do they use in Poland? I'm glad you asked. They actually don't use the euro. While being a member of the European Union, the geographic zone for the euro doesn't stretch that far, so they use their own currency, zloty, which historically translates to gold coin. Every single US dollar equals roughly 4 zlotys. If you want to live here, owning a house is not cheap. The average price is almost 400,000 in US dollars, but renting it is reasonable and cheap. Sounds like the system is rigged against you for ownership. You will own nothing and be happy. But at least there's a way here. Crime rates are rising in various areas in Europe, but Poland has one of the lowest crime rates in the entire European Union. I'm packing my bags. And in terms of packing your bags, Kłodzko is a smaller town but with quite the tourist allure. This old town will blow your mind with the amount of churches, steeples, towers, old shops, and interesting architecture all around the center of its downtown area, of which Team Poland yet again has built an amazing amount. This area began in the 1st century BC, so we're talking pre-Christ area, and it has been historically established that there are settlements in the area that engaged in trade with the Roman Empire. The town itself traded hands in ownership between Poland and Bohemia several times. I love that song so much. There's these beautiful bits of poetry from the Bohemian Duke writing about how he burned Kłodzko to the ground, but then they rebuilt it shortly afterwards. I can smell the roasting flesh and screams of terror while I read the parchment with a nice glass of wine. Without missing a beat, the town is depopulated by plagues over and over again. Centuries later, all the way down to almost 5,000 people, but they rebuilt, and today the population is just over 30,000. Bravo. Poland has also started some meager progress in a town called Katowice. Originally started blowing up just before the Industrial Revolution when it was discovered that the area had major coal reserves. Now, while it sounds like a recent establishment, Silesian and Slavic tribes have lived here for at least 1,000 years, so don't get excited. It's f***ing Europe. Everywhere you step, someone has died there. A baby was born there. Opium was smoked there. Maybe even all of those at the same time. Another village dating back to almost 1,000 years old is Buksek in Lask County. Unfortunately, unlike some of the French counterparts that have the ruins or buildings of 1,000-year-old villages preserved, this Polish village has the sentiment of a normal suburb, with the occasional building that sticks out as a relic from the past being centuries old or more. Here in the southeastern region of Poland, most of this village comes from the historical family that owned it, the Bykowskis, with a coat of arms indicating nobility and everything. Speaking of little Polish wonders, here is some beginning progress on a little town called Władysław-Śląski, a notable tourist town with a reputation for being green and clean. They have nearby skiing for the winter and nearby swimming for the summer. They also have nearby coal mines, very clean, and lots of industry with, I'm sure, are lots of pipes with belching smoke coming out of them. I'm getting some conflicting information about this place. Speaking of being confused, we have a sizable city block with really unique buildings in the city of Częstochowa. I wish I could tell you more about these buildings since they look real interesting, but I only got warps to the specific places. We have a //where command that tells you the coordinates of where you're standing, but no server I've ever been to so far has allowed me permissions for the command. I explore these servers to show you what's there, but I'm doing the best with what I have to work with. As far as the cars in the parking lot, if you'll remember, I made a video where we basically basically said they weren't required. I think they're a charming addition to this case. They look like cute little Minecraft golf carts. If you want a place to play golf, don't go looking for it at Przemysl, as the city is nestled at the front of the mountains, and thus, this completed radius in particular, completed by Team Poland in Minecraft, is on a constant slope, making the rich guy trade deal game that takes up hordes of land impossible to play. Dang it! This area was initially fought over in a three-way by Poland, the Hungarians, and the Kievan Rus. Remember Kievan Rus? One of the Russian empires before Russia was called Russia, bordering on ancient, preceded by the Scythians. This place had an age of prosperity during the Renaissance, which turned sour when the Swedes invaded with their little empire. Today, in classical European style, it's filled with, you guessed it, old town wonders like castles, churches, and museums. But if you were to see a city of the opposite, look no further than Rzeszów. Meager progress has begun here, a very elitist city filled with businesses and a high standard of living that I'm sure is very expensive. The company Budimex hired award-winning architectural studio Studio Lamella to build the Stadion Arena in Lublin, Poland, which is what you see before you. It hosted the 2019 Polish Cup final game. It was one of the venues for the 2019 FIFA World Cup. Progress hasn't been finished yet in Minecraft, but you can see with the seating it's prepared to host over 15,000 people, though I'm not sure we could replicate that in Minecraft since Steve is a whopping 6 foot 5 inches tall, approximately, and is strangely wide for a human being. A human truck. He's an upright human truck. And speaking of Lublin, let your eyes feast on yet another gigantic area of completed progress by Team Poland in the area of Lublin, centered around its old town, or Stare Miasto, the 9th largest Polish city that flourished between Krakow, we covered that one, and Vilnius, the Lithuanian capital. As beautiful as this city is, it was destroyed all the time. Mongols, Tatars, Ruthenians, and Lithuanians. In response to this, some rich medieval guy named Casimir III built a masonry castle in 1341 with surrounding defensive walls to protect the area. This is when things started lasting more than just a single invasion. But this area exists on the road to the Lithuanian capital and has been destroyed by Lithuanians who are north of Poland, so let's talk about that instead. Interestingly enough, Lithuanian is the language of Lithuania. F***ing amazing. This is important because it's a Baltic language that is very similar to Latvian, the language of the country north of that. Lithuanian has almost nothing in common with Poland's language, Polish. Let's add to this picture. Most sovereign countries in Europe are comparable to the sizes of states in the United States of America. Imagine living in Oregon and your northward neighboring state, Washington, speaks a completely different language that is nothing like yours. That is basically the state of Europe. In Poland, they speak Polish, which is similar to Czech and kind of Russian, but neighboring Poland is also Germany with an entirely different language of German with different roots. So Germany and Lithuania neighbor your country with languages completely foreign to you, and they're just a 2-hour drive away or whatever. And then there's Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, which you also border, which have similar language coming from the same historical roots, but significantly different enough that you would have trouble communicating with them. The United States, on the other hand, we all speak the same language. Some of our regions have different accents, but we're united by language and culture, with incredibly overpowered geography. You put this whole picture together, and it starts to make sense the power that we wield on the global stage. Europe is by far more interesting, though. Would you rather go to Poland or North Dakota? There's f***ing nothing there. F***ing nothing. Which is why Poland has more built-in Minecraft than the least active 20 states combined in the USA. And that's enough information on Lublin, Poland, because I am great at staying on topic. Now you're gonna love this little town being built in Team Poland. Its name is Kok. There was actually an event in the Napoleonic Wars called the Battle of Kok, where the Polish army was expelling Austrian forces out of the area. They fought long and hard for Kok. The Polish won, but their commander followed the fleeing Austrians too closely and ended up getting killed. What an idiot. These days, excited tourists come, eager to see Kok. And then they pray afterwards, often for forgiveness, in the church that we see here, built in Minecraft. You would think as we get to the bottom of this list that we get smaller in completed radius of progress, right? Wrong. The chosen towns are getting smaller, but Poland is still based as building a ton of each one. That's clear to see here in Skep, where they've made a significant amount of suburbs near the lake thingy. Another three-way happened over this town, being fought over by Russia, Prussia, and Poland, the usual suspects. This town has horrifying modern stories about you-know-what. I'm just not going to get into it to keep this from getting too dark, but small-town Poland is really a wonder that a lot of tourists seem to enjoy. You can come here to forget your life or start a new one, and enjoy a slower pace with a beautiful landscape surrounding the water. Now, they don't have too wide of a radius of completed progress here in Olsztyn, but what has been built is unbelievably gorgeous. What's really cool about this city is we actually have the exact year of when the forest was cleared to build the starting settlement for this city, which happened in 1348. That's great because using historical documents for these cities usually start with, we have some vague evidence that some sort of human settlement was documented to have existed in 655, not built, so it's probably older than that. Those stupid ancient Catholic serfs and godless pagans were horrible at record keeping. Poland captured this shit during the Hunger War. That's right, bitch, give me all your food. This town slowly rose up from that point until 1600, when the bubonic plague killed people and a fire burnt down the town. Double whammy. A lot of the buildings in the town square of this city are regarded as some of the finest Gothic and other styled architecture in Poland, built during the Renaissance. The whole defending castle became a museum in modern times, and the overall vibe of the area is really cool. I haven't been there, but you can trust me. A humble amount of progress has started also in Miedzywodzie. We call things a village, but this is really a village with only 600 inhabitants. They've completed this even smaller village of Stożek with an administrative building and beautiful houses surrounding the serene lake. All foliage is fully complete, which is really exciting. I can only imagine what it's like in real life. And there's some low-key, really sexy progress here in the city of Pila, with the surrounding countryside beautifully ornated by things like trees and such. The word Pila is actually Polish for the word saw, because in the 1800s there was a serial killer on the loose who would actually saw people in half, usually entire families at a time. Just kidding, I made that entire story up, though that is the Polish word for saw because it was a popular woodcutting town historically. Makes sense, given all the trees. The architectural beauty of all that is displayed here is somewhat recent, given that this town, like many others at some point, was burned entirely to the ground in various German, Polish, Prussian struggles. Poland's got this place, Rudaslaska, and they've started building it in Minecraft. But in real life, it must be off-axis in comparison to the towns and cities in the rest of the country, because if you notice, things don't seem exactly like you would expect them to look like in Build the Earth, at least in one direction. The town is mostly on Minecraft block alignment, and it looks weird, doesn't it? You see this? This is such a rare moment. We need to cherish this place for coming full circle and making it seem strange. As for the population data, because I know you were curious about that, it seems to have peaked in 1991 and has been falling ever since. That was near the USSR collapse, so it maybe has something to do with that. In any case, enjoy the straight buildings. And do you remember that insane Barrio Mugica built in South America that had over 5,000 buildings built by a single builder? Well, get ready for the Polish equivalent, because I believe one single Polish builder built this entire small town and a gigantic span of the surrounding fields. Karen the Polish is the one who did this, built the entire village of Rogozino, Poland, in Minecraft. He worked on it for the better part of a year, 5 months at least, when he finished the better part of the suburbs of the village and the greater field encompassing such a wide area. We were barely able to load all of it. Now, this could be called your typical Polish small town, but as a connoisseur of American small towns, I was curious as to how the cultural difference stacks up. The first thing I noticed is that all of the few small businesses here all get 5 stars from the reviews of people who have gone there. Even the auto shop, which is hilarious to me. In America, pretty much every auto shop is going to have an alarming minority of 1-star reviews, with this gigantic novel of a tale on how the owners and mechanics completely screwed them. There's none of that here. It's hard to find a business that doesn't have 100% 5-star review rate. I think the only one was Swolski Killmat, a food joint. 4.4-star average, which is still great. The pizza looks delicious. I'm rating it 5 stars. Congratulations to them, and to Kieran the Polish, who single-handedly caused our cinematic rendering computers to fry from generating the views of a small Polish town in Minecraft. And that's everything Poland has ever done. If you would like to join the team or check out the progress for yourself, an invite link to join them is floating around. See you tomorrow. A huge thanks to our Tier 5 patrons, Solly and Third Edit Man, whose financial contributions have helped pay for 10 pounds of rubber bands, over 12 cases of dihydrogen oxide, and many, many lunches for an awesome 6-year-old kid.